All right, good evening and welcome everybody to the June 1st, 2022 Village of Woodbury Planning Board meeting. We'll get right to it and I will ask that, hold on. All this talking and I was ill prepared. We ask that everybody please rise for, I know, dramatic build up, there we go.
National anthem, play ball.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
please be seated. Hold on, a few more people. Sorry, just letting some more people into the meeting. All right, again, and welcome to the June 1st Village of Woodbury Planning Board meeting. All right, we'll get right to it. Has the board had a chance to review the minutes from the May 18th meeting?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I will offer a motion to accept the minutes as provided.
1 second.
Second by Tommy. Any questions?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, first item on tonight's agenda, Popeyes Woodbury Center, review draft decision for proposed site plan, special permit, and ARB, sorry, playing gatekeeper and reading at the same time. ARB for demolition of an existing pizzeria and owner building and proposed construction of a 2,454 square foot Popeyes restaurant with drive-through. Said property is located at 20 Center Drive in Central Valley, is known as the Village of Woodbury Tax Map, Section 225. Block 2, lot 1.1.2. Okay. Drew, right? You're here for Popeyes?
Yes, I am.
Oh, I remembered. I presume you got a copy of the resolution?
I did have a copy of the resolution to review.
Okay, then we will get right to it. So after several pages of facts and findings, we go into the specific conditions. All conditions of prior approvals in connection with property shall continue to be in full force and effect, and this resolution does not supersede or otherwise modify such prior approvals and conditions except as specifically set forth in this resolution. No building permit shall be issued authorizing the construction or renovation of structures inconsistent with the architectural renderings submitted to and approved by the Architectural Review Board as part of this approval, nor shall any certificate of occupancy be issued for any structures constructed except in conformance with such renderings. Any deviations from such renderings will require further planning board review. Site lighting shall be designed with non-glare fixtures, which provide internal shielding to eliminate off-site glare and limit foot candle level at site perimeter 0.1 foot candles. Light fixtures shall not exceed 35 feet to the top of the fixture. Signs shall only be illuminated during operating hours. General lighting shall be reduced to security levels after operating hours. The owner shall be responsible for maintaining and emptying the grease trap twice per year or as needed. Prior to the signing of the plans by the chairman, the applicant shall A, revise the plans to include a second handicap parking space. B, revise the plans to demonstrate parking waiver required and approved by the planning board. C, provide proof of receipt of a permit from Orange County Sewer District Number 1 permitting the installation of a sewer lateral. D, provide confirmation from the Village of Harriman indicating consent to the plans to be signed with revision date of plans noted in that correspondence. E, comply with the memorandum of the village traffic engineer dated April 28, 2022 to the satisfaction of the village traffic engineer. Applicant to identify on plan the areas of landscaping maintenance required to obtain and maintain site distances to the satisfaction of the village traffic engineer. 6, all stormwaters must flow unrestricted to drains and no ponding or areas of potential ice development shall be created. All waste shall be placed inside the dumpsters as shown on the plans. The areas surrounding the dumpsters shall be kept in neat condition. All new windows and doors shall be constructive of non-reflective material. As shown on the plans, the owner shall conduct necessary maintenance to landscaping to maintain sight distance in perpetuity. Almost stumbled over that word. All right, is board okay with the resolution as read?
Well, there's one condition that I think was skipped over, and that is that the applicant has to comply with the memorandum of the village engineer dated April 14th, 2022, to the satisfaction of the village engineer.
That would be,
Um,
sorry, 5-E, my fault.
So I also just want to go up to the paragraph right before resolution of approval, which is a finding where I put May 31st. It would actually be today, June 1st. That the planning board determined that the combination of uses on this lot will generate parking needs which are less than the total amount of parking spaces that the zoning code requires. Therefore, the board is determined to reduce the number of required spaces by 1%, a reduction of 12 stalls, as permitted under the village code, section 31040C. I just want to make sure that that's part of that the board knows it's approving that as well by this.
Oh, and if I may add, I know the finding right before that was just a statement that on May 31st, which was at last night's Village Board of Trustees meeting, the village board granted an exemption from the moratorium, which did happen last night.
I just wanted to add a little bit on the parking waiver that was required, just for the board's, awareness that was discussed at the last meeting, and those figures were presented by the applicant to kind of, facilitate this waiver that you would be approving tonight. We haven't received revised plans to reflect that, but it's in the conditions, the specific conditions down below that they should present plans to verify that.
Remember, we had a lot of discussion on math on that one too. Everybody was doing the percent, trying to figure the percentage out there. So, okay. Is the board okay with the resolution as written and the comments from consultants?
Yes.
I'll offer a motion to accept the resolution.
One thing, on the approval page, the date for Desiree Potvin approving, it says May, it should be June.
Yeah, I knew I did that in another spot. I don't know my months.
When they transition, one day to the next, it's one day, not a month different.
It's hard to keep up. Yeah. But thank you. I will correct that.
Anything else? I'll accept a motion to accept the resolution of approval. Mr. Capaccio on the second. I'm sorry, Mike, I saw your finger. Question?
No, I was trying to second, but I got beat to it.
Sorry. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.
You too, take care. Next item on the agenda is a continuation of a public hearing for Woodbury Commons / RMU for proposed amended site plan and special permit for an increase in size of the previously approved retail merchandising units from 50 square feet to 100 square feet within the Woodbury Commons Shopping Center. Said property is located on Route 32 in Central Valley and is known as the Village Woodbury Tax Maps, Section 225, Block 1, Lot 70.2, and Section 226, Block 1, Lot 1. Okay, so this is a continuation of a previously open public hearing. This was continued to allow the applicant to seek information from the state building department. That information was received on Tuesday morning, and it has not been reviewed by any of our consultants nor the board. So that cannot be taken into account or discussed tonight because nobody is prepped to talk about that from this side of the house. So with that said, I will very quickly open the public hearing if the public wishes to speak on this application. This is the public hearing for Woodbury Commons RMU.
Yeah, I just have a quick comment. Will the public hearing continue? Because I think we're gonna, my understanding was that you guys were gonna review this. There are some people I know that are interested in speaking. And because my understanding was that this was going to be extended to the next meeting, I guess my question will be there an opportunity for those people to speak at the next meeting as well?
We will be continuing the public hearing until the meeting on the 15th so that our consultants have time to review the information that was provided on Tuesday.
I appreciate that.
Second call for anybody in the public that would like to speak on the Woodbury Commons RMU continuation of public hearing. Third call for the public hearing on the Woodbury Commons / RMU. Okay, seeing nobody unmute themselves and nobody entering any chat messages, I will offer a motion to continue the public hearing for the Woodbury Commons RMU to the June 15th planning board meeting. Second by Mr. Pastel. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
And just for the board and the applicant's reference, being nothing new was submitted prior to the deadline, there are no reports from our consultants, just because there was nothing for them to review. We did your memo on Tuesday morning, so we will make sure that is included in the review for the next meeting so that everybody's up to speed on that. Anything else you guys would like to add to the
No.
conference for the evening?
No, thank you. I'm sorry it was so late, but unfortunately I didn't get it until last week either. So
By the holiday, another long holiday weekend kind of put a monkey work into everybody. So,
that and one major computer issue.
all right, that's okay. But we got it, so we'll get it reviewed and we'll have it all ready to go for the next meeting for you guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, next item is a continuation again of a public hearing for Friedman Blueberry Lane. This is for a revised site plan and special permit for proposed conversion of an existing 2,763 square foot addition of a single family home to be used as a place of worship. Said property is located at 32 Blueberry Lane in Highland Mills and is known as the Village of Woodbury Tax Maps, Section 217, Block 2, Lot 4.2. Again, we agreed to continue this public hearing as we were still waiting for a signed substantial burden letter from the applicant. As of today, we still have yet to receive, right, Kelly? You didn't get anything yet either, any sort of a signed substantial burden letter. I believe, Todd, you're here representing the applicant tonight? You're muted, sir, or we just can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can, sir.
Okay. Yes, I'm here. Yes.
Okay, so any status on when we can expect? I know you had counsel on the last meeting. Jay Myro was going to review the letter, was supposedly going to get us a signed copy of that letter, which we still haven't gotten yet.
You don't have a signed copy of the hardship letter?
Nope. So if you want the board to consider the waivers that are being requested, we need that hardship letter to consider the waivers. Otherwise, we would have to consider the application minus those waivers, right, Kelly? So
That's correct, and then they'd likely need variances.
So again, we can offer you the same courtesy. We can extend the public hearing to the 15th of June. This would actually be the third time, right? We're now requesting the signed hardship letter. So I think we've been fairly lenient and willing to work with the applicant. So is the board okay with giving one more extension for them to get the hardship letter in?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I will offer a motion to expend, oh, I'm sorry. Anybody here wishing to speak on the Blueberry Lane public hearing? Totally forgot that part. Second call for the 32 Blueberry Lane application public hearing. Any public comment? Third and final call for the 32 Blueberry Lane public hearing. Any public comment? I see nothing in the chat. Nobody's unmuted to speak. I will then offer a motion to expend the public hearing to the 15th of June. Do I have a second?
Second.
Tommy, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
So Todd, yeah, I really can't stress the importance that your applicant get this into us. Without that letter, you'll have to go in front of the ZBA and get whatever relief your application needs.
I understand.
Okay, thank you, sir, for your time tonight.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay, next up on the agenda is Gardens at Harriman Station. This is a discussion to the status of the application review for the proposed transit-oriented development Said property is located at State Route 17 in the village of Woodbury and is known in the village of Woodbury tax maps as section 243, block 1, lot 1 through 25. Just for the public's information, the applicant's consultants had come to us a few months ago, had asked if they could start working with the village's consultants on some technical issues in the background. This board had agreed to allow that to happen with the caveat that they come to us every couple of months to give us an update of where they stand with the application. And I believe, Mr. Esposito, you are up.
All right, thank you very much. Yes, in February, you granted authorization for us to work with the consultants. We had our first meeting a couple of weeks ago. And just to let you know that we're also coordinating with the consultants of Harriman because this application is within Woodbury and Harriman. So our first meeting, we had about 10 consultants on board from both municipalities as well as on the design team. And the topic of conversation for that meeting was just kind of, getting everyone back up to speed on where we were. But the main topics were drawings, figures, and then the review of the DEIS drawings that will be accompanying the submission. And I think it went rather well. Everybody had an opportunity to, put in provide their input. We have our next meeting scheduled for June 14th, which is going to we're going to be discussing zoning compliance, subdivision regulations. And again, we'll have both municipal team consultants on board. Our next one after that, we have a tentatively scheduled meeting in July 12th, and that's going to be primarily just sewer and water. And again, that'll be with Village of Harriman and the Village of Woodbury. And then the fourth meeting we have tentatively scheduled for August 16th, and that's going to be traffic and transportation. In addition to these meetings, we have a meeting scheduled tomorrow afternoon with the DOT, or tomorrow morning, sometime tomorrow, with the DOT. I know we invited the village's consultants, again, Harriman and Woodbury, to attend if they'd like. I know Phil Greeley is going to be in attendance for the Village of Woodbury for that. And again, same thing, it's been a while since we were at the department, so we're going to, and we have some new players there as well, so we're going to introduce the new players to the project and just sort of, get a schedule with the department. We'd like to, start to have monthly meetings with them, looking at our off-site improvements and analyses as moving forward. We're also before the DEC for wetlands disturbance permit. We're looking to upgrade or renovate one of the existing wells, OR1, which was drilled back in, I think, 1989, and which doesn't meet today's requirements for public well water. So we want to redo that well. Before we can do that work, we need a temporary wetlands disturbance permit because it's located in the buffer. So we've been working, and I think we're looking forward to our next meeting with the consultants to keep the project moving. And again, we'd like to thank the board for providing the authorization to have these meetings.
Sorry, muted myself. I appreciate the update, Steve. Sounds like you're getting some work done in the background. When do you think you'll have a submission for the board? Probably not a couple months, right?
Based on, our last meeting with the consultant is going to be mid-August, so I would say probably sometime in the fall, probably October, early November.
Okay, so based on all the dates that you're throwing out, would it make sense to bring you back September 7th just to give us an update of where you stand with your meetings, and then you'll have time to put a full submission together and submit to the board?
Yes, I think that would be a good time.
How does the board feel about, based on Steve's timeline, with his upcoming meetings and such? Is the board okay with having them come back September 7th for an oral update?
Yep, that works for me.
It sounds good, but if any issues come up that need further discussion.
Yes, we'll get them on sooner if we need to, or Natalie or Phil will reach out to me or the building department, and I'll relay to the board if we need to get together sooner than that. Does the members have any questions for Steve right now?
Yeah. I reviewed the minutes from the last meeting, and February, and I asked the applicant about other completed successful TODs, and if they can provide us a report on the financial and traffic impact before and after their submission. And they said they would give it to us prior to their submittal proposal. So I just want to make sure that's still out there.
Well, it was part of the original, that's actually part of the original scope for us to look at other TODs. So we can, if you'd like, we can get that to you maybe prior to the formal submission, or
Yeah.
we can include it in the DEIS.
I just want to make sure it was still out there.
Yep. No, no.
Okay,
It's,
thank you.
and it's part of the scope too. So.
Thank you.
I don't know what the mute button is tonight. Any other questions for Steve? Okay, so we'll just put a note on our agenda, Natalie, to bring them back for September 7th. Okay. All right, so hold on. I know it's going to be you, Steve, but let me just do the formality of our next item on the agenda. Shops at Woodbury / retaining wall. Review and discuss site plan submitted for ARB review of proposed retaining walls within the Shops at Woodbury Shopping Plaza. Said property is located at the intersection of Route 32, Losey Lane, and is known as the Village of Woodbury Tax Map, Section 225, Block 1, Lots 34.1 and 34.22. Okay. You want to go ahead, Steve, or is it going to be Anthony?
Yes, Steve and I are becoming a little bit of a tandem here. Sorry about that, Mr. Chairman.
I'm not sure if we're doing like a little stick going back and forth. Or...
I just assumed you're sick of hearing from Steve, so I figured I'd jump in. It's nice to be here. My name's Anthony Mirando. I'm an attorney with Cuddy and Fader, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the shops. We're helping the shops close out the conditions of approval with a resolution that was adopted for the overall project here. They've been working on closing out those conditions for quite a while. We believe we're right at the end, and there's sort of two sets of conditions that are most relevant. One, the conditions we're resolving to address getting the site plan signed, which we think we're just about there. And second, which is what we're here for tonight, is there's a few conditions under paragraph 25 in the resolution that was adopted by this board for the shops, which is the conditions necessary to get the building permit to start the phase 1 of the project, which is really the infrastructure. The last condition that we think we have to resolve is subpart B, which addresses the retaining walls and the requirement for an ARB review as a follow-up to the application that was approved. I'll let Steve walk through the details of the application and some of the history. He certainly has better command over it than I do. But as you probably recall, this application went through a thorough several-year planning board review process. The retaining walls were on the site plans that were approved previously and contemplated as part of the seeker consistency determination in neg deck. And it also included as part of that public hearing process. So Steve, maybe walk through sort of the details to remind the board where those walls are and the ARB factors.
Sure. So just a little history. This site was originally received site plan approval for a business center, which included a Cabela's, about a 90,000 square foot Cabela's store, and two 4,800 square foot restaurant pads. It went through site plan review, special use permit, a full-blown EIS, and findings were filed to include SECRA. And we got to the point where Cabela's actually started construction, and we're well underway and under construction. And unfortunately, the corporate headquarters pulled the plug on the project, along with a couple other projects throughout the country at that time. The property went back on the market. Mr. Goldklang, our current applicant, who's with us tonight, by the way, purchased the land, and we've been before the board for several years. Consistently in both projects, there's always been 3 retaining walls proposed. One along Route 6, one along the main entrance, and one behind, say, the gas station. Those walls were thoroughly reviewed for the Cabela's application, as Anthony pointed out, and they've been on this set of plans throughout the entire review process for the shops. The details that we're going to look at tonight were part of the last submitted plan set that received conditional final approval. We think they were always part of the project, and we're now just looking at the architectural components of the walls. There's three walls. Two of those are modular walls, precast modular walls. We're proposing the same wall system that was reviewed and approved for Cabela's for the two modular walls. And then the other wall is a poured in place concrete wall. And I don't know if you, Chris, if you want to share the screen, if you want me to put them up, or if everybody has those available, I'm not sure.
If you could, we do have a few newer board members that weren't around for that whole process. So I think it'd be good to, let me just give you the ability. Okay, you should be able to see. All right.
So cover sheet, these are the three walls. This is the wall along, this is the location of the hotel. So it's along the south east westerly side of the site. Route 6 is right here. So it's most visible probably from travelers along the Route 6 corridor. The other wall set, this is the entrance wall. This is building 1. This is the main entrance or Losi Lane. And again, it would be as you enter into the site, the wall will be on your left-hand side. And then the other wall, oops, sorry about that, is the gas station is right here. Chuck's place is right here. And this is the proposed wall here. As I said, these three walls were always as part of both applications. During the process, if you recall, during the 131 construction, we coordinated with the DOT and their contractor to do some grading on site, and also which allowed them and us to tie the site in a little bit better to the surrounds, because they pretty much graded all around the site. This is also, they constructed the 200-car parking lot. So we were actually able to reduce the wall slightly, both in linear footage and in height. So again, reducing any potential impacts, visual impacts from these walls. And the process allowed us to, reduce that to the greatest extent practical. This right in here, this is the modular wall that's being proposed. It's a beige wall. That was, again, reviewed. That was the originally approved one for the Cabela site. We're using the same wall. We thought it was very attractive. And then the concrete wall is a poured in place concrete wall, and that's what this represents right here. We have the details for the guardrails and fencing for safety purposes as well.
The board have questions for Steve?
I'm good.
Natalie, you want to go ahead with your report?
Sure. I'll try to keep it brief because I think Steve and Anthony kind of provided a good baseline for this application. And essentially, just to reiterate, the application for ARB is a requirement of the resolution of approval, specifically specific condition number 25B. I agree with, Steve, that the walls were approved as part of the site plan and essentially in the locations and the heights that were provided previously. So really this is a review for the architectural features and, visual impacts. Our memo describes, similar to what Steve already said, where these walls would be most visible. And, I think it's somewhat apparent. So I won't go through all of that with you again. But really what we recommended in our memo for, maybe materials that would be helpful for the board to kind of consider the magnitude of these walls is a rendering kind of showing them in their proposed setting. you know, the segmental wall. Now you have sort of a visual of what that's going to look like, the concrete wall, which is going to essentially be behind the gas station, maybe a little different. There are barriers, fencing, as well as guardrails with, you know, certain barriers that the applicant is proposing. So it may be helpful to kind of consider, like I said, a rendering. And then the last thing that I think you need as part of your typical ARB review is the completed ARB form. And that's really just to kind of check that box. Otherwise, those were pretty much the bulk of our comments on this. And, you know, really, I think the board should look at this, you know, with your eyes and what's.
With the poured concrete wall, that's just gonna be it. It's just gonna be a finished concrete wall when you're looking from 32 towards the gas station, Steve?
Yes.
Why wouldn't that be a modular wall like the others?
Modular walls require additional space to construct. If you look at this detail right here, these are the geotech, these darker lines right here are
All I
geotech.
see is you.
Yeah, no, sorry, you gotta reshare, Steve. I stopped it when Natalie started talking.
Okay. One second.
Come on, Steve, you're a pro at this now.
All right.
There's been some earthwork done in back of the gas station now. Is that related to this or just totally to the gas station?
I believe they're doing they're doing tank replacements and everything over there right now.
Okay. So I'm sorry, what was the question?
I was just curious why we're not doing the modular wall instead of the poured concrete.
So the modular is wall number 1 and wall
I
number
think
2.
I think I actually reversed that. Why wouldn't you be doing the modular where the poured concrete is?
Right. It's a matter of room. The modular wall takes more room to do is modular.
Okay, so it's just a matter of spacing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, is there any landscaping going in front of the concrete wall, Steve?
I didn't bring in the landscaping, but to the best of my recollection is yes, we do have some plantings along the foundation.
Yeah, because I think aesthetically that a poured concrete wall right there is going to be a little bit of an eyesore.
I'm just.
Well, one of the things we can do is put an admix in the concrete, so it would
Color tone it.
Yeah, so we can match the beige color of the modular walls
I think that would work.
and just put an admix in.
Yep.
Yeah, because if you look, I mean, is it going? I guess a rendering would be helpful. How high is that wall going to be here? To the top of where the earth is now, or higher?
Yeah. Approximately where the earth is now.
Okay.
Right now, well, actually, yeah. So right where the pointer is.
Yep.
It's going to be about that height right there.
All this is going to get wiped out then.
Not all of it. No, some of that's on Chuck's land and some of it's on ours.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with Tommy. At least if it's not gray, probably be a little bit better than just this monolithic gray mass of concrete.
Yep.
Well, what you'll have is there'll be some lines in the wall. You know, we can cast them. You know, so there'll be some relief. It's just not going to be a solid concrete wall. And then, like I said, we can put an admix in it to make it beige or to make it similar in color to the modular walls.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if it's less stark, it'll be better because that wall across from the state police barracks is horrible.
Look at that, 384 for gas. Ever remember those days?
Wow.
Oh, this is pictures only from November of 2021. Sorry, I had to. Okay, so some admix, I think would be good. Are you able to do a rendering, Steve, so the board can see what it looks like? Again, like I said, you have 3 new members on the board that weren't here for the original project.
Me,
You, Tommy, and
Evan.
I'm guessing, I'm just not sure where you would want the rendering to be from. Is it from the, say, from the viewpoint? we were
Yeah, I was
just
gonna
looking
say,
at?
maybe from the view corridors would help.
I think from 32 is probably right, the most visual impact there.
As you come out of Woodbury Center,
Yeah, so looking towards your project as you come up out of the center.
Yeah, I would also just jump in and ask a question. The contemplation is on color, because material we're somewhat limited on there. So I just want to make sure we know what we're going to get out of a rendering by doing it.
I think it's the colors. People just want to see what it's going to look like with the shrubbery removed, some of the greenery removed, that wall in place with its relief lines, its expansion joints, and what color it would be, what it's going to look like. The board likes pictures. We do well.
No, I understand. You probably know this, we're pushing hard to move forward, and if we produce the rendering and it doesn't, I'm trying to figure out what it would result in, what change it would result in. That's all.
Well, maybe, I don't know if this is possible, and I'm not sure if you guys can answer this currently, but is it possible to do sort of a faux facade on top of the concrete that would make it look similar to the retaining wall? Does that exist? Just
Basically, we can put, fenestrations in the wall. You just put them in the mold, in the mold. So when we put when we pour, there'll be in the forms, we'll put molding within the forms. So when you pour, it creates relief on the wall. So it's not
It almost looks like the blocks that would be in the
Right.
modular wall.
Well, I would suggest that we just do vertical.
Something, I mean, my biggest concern is just having a big concrete slab right there, and anything to dress it up a little.
Well, the section of the wall that's probably most visible, which is the wall closest to the entrance road, that's the lowest point of the wall. Where it gets, the tallest point is really behind the gas station.
Well, that's why a rendering would help.
Yeah, it's not uncommon for this board to ask for pictures to see how something's going to look at a site. It could completely change the board's mind once they see it there. Again, this is the ARB. This is, the way this project went down. The applicant had agreed to do the ARB separately from the original site plan design. And you have some newer members on the board that were not here, that did not go through all of that original review and process. So they're curious what it's going to look like, and I can't blame them because they weren't here for the 2 years worth of review on this project.
and we're not trying to reject it. We just want to understand it.
Okay, which we appreciate, and we will, if that's what the board would like, we will produce that document.
Appreciate that.
There's a couple other items that Natalie brought out in her email, because our memo that I think we should discuss as well, because we're really at crunch time for us, and I know that's not the board's problem, but I know the applicant has worked as hard as he could with the board to do everything that the village has asked him to do, and he's done them. So we can prepare the document. I guess if we're going to do,
You're about to steal my thunder, aren't you?
we're going to do a rendering. But I'd like to get the two other items on the board, and that was the secret item and the 239 item.
Man, Steve, you did.
Sorry.
You stole my thunder.
Because I just wanted to set that up for Kelly.
Oh, okay.
there's-
Well, then it's okay.
The Kelly will surprise you because there's a third one too that we can.
Oh, that's right, the third one. Sorry, I forgot about that one.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay.
Kelly.
So seeker, as it was discussed, that was performed for the entire project, and the walls that are proposed are consistent with the board's prior action. So if you feel comfortable, the board can reaffirm its seeker finding statement.
Yeah, I don't see an issue with that. Does the board see an issue with
No,
that?
no problem at all.
No problem.
I'll make a motion to reaffirm secra on this item, on this application, sorry. Second by Tommy. Any questions?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
And the next is that GML referral on this is not required. But I believe it was also referred to the county anyway, as part of the referrals for buildings 7 and 8 and 9, which did come back as local determinations. But for this, it is not required. And then the third thing is whether or not the board wants to hold a public hearing. It is in your discretion for an ARB public hearing.
How's the board feel?
I think a project of this scope should have a public hearing.
Everybody else?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, let's do. Mike? Where'd you go? I lost your square. Oh, there's your square.
He's muted. There he is.
Yeah, I agree as well.
Okay, so Steve, do you think you get the rendering done in time for the 15th? Because it'd have to be in by Friday. Ooh. Not gonna be done.
This Friday?
Technically,
That's not gonna happen. I don't think we can do that. But I don't think we'll make Friday. I mean, we can try, but I honestly don't think we'll be able to do that.
All right, so then that would put you at July 6th for the next meeting. Because it would be helpful to have the rendering at the public hearing.
Yep.
Correct.
Do everything in one fell swoop.
If I could, your code allows the board to waive the requirement of a public hearing. I know it's a big project, but if you recall, we've gone through several public hearings with Cabela's. This project has gone through several public hearings with the ZBA and site plan with the planning board. We really have no neighbors. This site is surrounded by state highways. So it would, the waiver for the public hearing is, that there is, if there is not going to be a impact to the local neighborhood, then you have the ability to waive it.
All right, and I just told the board, and 4 of the board members just requested a public hearing. That wasn't a decision I made on my own. I just asked all the board members, and they
I know. I just figured I would.
The board is quite familiar with the new ARB rules. We're in it every day, every meeting. So July 6th it is then. I will offer a motion to schedule a public hearing for this application July 6th. Go ahead, Anthony.
I'm sorry. I was gonna say, and I hear what Steve's saying. We can't make Friday. I wanted to see if there's any chance we can hold a hope for Friday, even though it's unlikely. And then if not, be on the 6th of July. It's hard to commit at this moment because I don't think Steve's the one preparing it, but.
Right, but then it's outside what this board's normal practice.
Okay.
We require by Friday, and then if I start doing it for you guys, I got to do it for everybody else, and then it starts throwing the schedule off.
Okay.
So there's a motion on the floor for a July 6th public hearing. Do I have a second on that, Tommy? Any questions, Rich? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, I thought you just voted on that, Kelly. You just put your hand up at the exact time.
No, just hadn't playing with my hair over here. Okay.
All right, so we'll see you guys on the 6th.
Chris, might I offer, and feel free to just say no. Maybe it makes sense to authorize a draft resolution of approval for that date. If everything goes well with the public hearing and the renderings that were submitted, that could help the applicant along perhaps.
Yeah, we could do that.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you, Natalie.
And now Natalie stole my thunder. What is going on tonight, people?
You got to step up your game, Kelly.
I'm sorry. I was hesitation.
And Mr. Chairman, let me say, normally we wouldn't push, or I wouldn't push like that or ask in between. We're trying our best for the applicant here.
Understood. So if everything works out well on the 6th, then you guys should be okay.
Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, have a good night, Aaron. Oh, long time no see, Aaron. How are you?
Yeah, you look younger.
Oh, so trust me.
Well, I'll try to butter up the chairman.
All right.
We'll get it done. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Chris,
Do we have to vote on his draft resolution, Chris?
Yeah, I guess
Yeah,
you can make it all formal and stuff, right? So I'll offer a motion to have the council draft a resolution of approval for the retaining wall. Second by Michael. Any questions? All in favor? Aye.
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 Make sure you get the ARB form in, please, with
Yeah.
all the colors and the names and all that fun stuff too.
Got it.
With the color for the aggregate and that, just so everything can go through that night, because if we don't have that form, then that holds things up as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right,
Okay,
have a
good night.
Hey, I just want to say hello to the new board members.
How we doing?
Hi. Very good. Nice meeting you.
You too, sir.
And to the old board members.
You mean,
Very good.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, where are we? Woodbury Villas, review and discuss amended site plan and ARB for proposed relocation of the community building and parking lot within Woodbury Villas. Said property is located at Central Valley line and is known as the Village of Woodbury Tax Map, Section 254, Lot 4, Lot 2. I believe I saw Mr. Bershore and Mr. Hartman.
Good evening,
Hi.
everybody. We received, of course, Natalie's comment letter, and we have gone through that, and quite a few of the matters that are raised in the comment letter are already ones that were anticipated in our materials, and we can confirm and discuss that in greater detail tonight if you like. I think that the design should be now pretty close to final in terms of what we are proposing. I don't think that there will be any significant major changes. And from our end, I think that we would like to know if the board has any questions of us. And then there are a few more general matters that I'll go into in a couple of minutes.
Right now, Natalie, will you want to start off with I know you had a few points on this application.
Sure, and I, as per typical, I mean, our memorandum is pretty detailed, and we'll anticipate that the applicant will provide responses to our comments or address them in future plan submissions. So I won't review everything in detail unless the board has any specific questions for me. I did want to just bring up a couple of points that I think, will require the board's input, as well as sort of threshold issues, associated with this application. So one thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is the setbacks and the bulk requirements for this particular lot. As part of the original approval, defined setbacks were not necessarily established like they were for the high end, mid end, and other type of residential lots. However, the clubhouse was approved in a specific location with setbacks from the property lines. So one of the things we talk about in our memo is whether or not the applicant should be required to comply with the original setbacks based on the location of the home in relation to the property lines, or as per your code that outlines certain requirements for cluster subdivisions, which ultimately WP3 is. So that's something that I think that the board needs to consider, maybe with some input from Kelly, with just to kind of discuss those in a little bit more detail. For instance, in the front yard situation, the location of the prior clubhouse was 42 feet from the front yard line. The cluster subdivision would appear to require 40 feet. So 42 feet. A cluster subdivision would require 40 feet, and the applicant is currently proposing 37.1 feet, which is less than what would be required, from the original approved setbacks, as well as the cluster subdivision requirements. So that's something that we'd like, you to kind of consider. This may need a variance unless it could be shifted. Similarly, the side yard setback, previously the plan permitted 54 feet. Currently it's 31 feet from the side yard that is closest to where residential properties would be located. So one of the things we raise is, shifting the building kind of closer to the residential area could result in some noise or light spillage, although the applicant, is going to demonstrate that with some of, I think, the other comments that we provided as part of our memo. So that's just something for the board to consider. We also note that there is an increase in coverage as part of the proposed development. So we've asked for the applicant to kind of confirm the adequacy of the downstream facilities to manage that additional flow. Our memo notes that once the utilities are decided in their final locations, easements will need to be required or need to be provided and verified. And we've asked for a map to kind of demonstrate where all of those will be located in their final form. We've asked for a revised water and sewer demand form. We did review the calculations provided as part of the pump station analysis and agreed with those findings. So I think it's really just a matter of filling out the form to, meet those other calculations that were already provided. The applicant is now proposing, and I think this may be something that the applicant wants to discuss with you. The applicant's currently proposing a pump station and a force main that serves the gatehouse at Nininger. So as part of the original approval, that gatehouse was intended to be occupied full time. So it was supposed to have a restroom. In 2013, the board approved an amended site plan that reconfigured the sewer in that area and eliminated actually a major pump station as part of the development. And it rerouted the sewer actually to go by gravity through a main through Julian Court. When that was considered, the full-time occupancy of the gatehouse was not considered. So essentially the applicant, I think, is trying to rectify that in this submission and provide a facility that could serve that area, specifically the gatehouse. So that's the background on that. And we did have some comments on the pump station, and some of those more technical matters. We also had some comments on water and drainage that, we think could be addressed fairly easily. We noted, and I think we brought this up at a prior submission with respect to grading. This area has been used as a location for deposition of fill. So we've asked for the applicant to confirm the acceptability of that material for building upon by a geotechnical engineer. We think that one of the other things that the applicant is now proposing that's different from the original subdivision approval is an emergency access. So we think that that should be reviewed by the ESOs and their comments solicited. We've asked for some other minor things as far as a profile for that access and confirmation of turning movements for the vehicles that are intended to use the access, assuming it's an ambulance, since it's really proposed to access the courts. We had some comments on retaining walls and confirmation of the proposed heights as well as compliance with prior approvals. We've asked for the applicant to confirm light levels are limited to 0.1 foot candles at the property lines. Particularly, we think that's important on the lots bordering residential properties. And one of the things that I wanted to discuss with the board is right now the plan shows some light spillage onto the open space property or open space parcel. I guess it would be to the west. So one of the things I've asked you to consider is whether limiting the light levels to 0.1 foot candles in that location would actually be necessary, since that lot is actually proposed to be open space in perpetuity, and really not, and it's supposed to remain undeveloped. With respect to landscaping, we had some comments and asked the applicant to confirm consistency with the species that were part of the approved plan. We also note that the clearing limits on this site may have changed from the prior approval. So we've asked the applicant to confirm if there are any areas that still remain that could be preserved that have not already been cleared, consistent with the prior approval, that is. And then I think we had some other minor comments on snow storage locations, confirmation on wetland disturbance, if any, and details on the refuse enclosure. So with that being said, I probably reviewed more than I intended to, but if you guys have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'll turn it back to the applicant or Kelly.
The board have any questions for Natalie?
Just to double check that, so the site to the east of the clubhouse, that parcel is going to remain open, you said, in perpetuity, right? You're on mute.
Sorry, that's I believe it's the property to the west is the open space
To the west,
parcel.
I see. Okay, understood.
It would be open space G over here.
Yep, that's correct. And then these properties to the northeast, there are residential.
Any other questions?
And then we're losing space between the residential properties, correct?
Right, so the community center was originally closer to the open space parcel, but the way the applicants rearranged the plan is to shift them closer to the residential properties. So I think before there was a 54-foot setback from the open space parcel, and now there's 37 feet from this residential property to the northeast.
So basically 37 feet from the basketball court to the residential properties.
And then the
Up this way.
building.
Okay.
Yep. Mhm.
Any other questions from the board for Natalie?
Sorry, one more. If the lighting plan, so that shows, let me see if you can pull it up, Chris. Is that spillage of light, does it go, it looks like it goes pretty far into the northeast. Just wanted to verify that.
What are you looking for, Evan?
There's maybe I'm looking at another version, the older version that has the, I'm sorry, it's the, it's from RAB. Oh yeah, it's the same one. I think it's the next page. Yeah, that one. That simulation and foot candles.
Yeah, so we based our comments off of the prior plan that Chris had up. If you don't mind pulling that up, Chris, I'd appreciate it. So one of the things we asked the applicant to confirm is to sort of extend those foot candle levels to the property line where they're shown at the tennis court and sort of truncated where the walls are. So we want to see the foot candles to the property line, and that's typical of your requirements. And then the other comment that we had was towards the southwest, that the spillage really extends into this open space property, greater than 0.1. So
Down here where the 0.6, the 0.8s are, the 1.3s.
right. And so whether or not the board would, I know it's a typical requirement because of, the nature of this parcel, would you essentially consider some flexibility in that application in that area?
Fixed with shielding or diffusers.
So all the lighting is required to be dark sky, IDA, LEED compliant, downlit, shielded. So I think that's another thing that we've asked the applicant to confirm if they haven't already. I can't really recall.
I mean, I guess we could survey the local wildlife and see if they'd be okay with it.
There you go.
The open space. It's going to keep the chipmunks up at night. Oh, come on, crack a smile, Larry. It's a joke. Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, I'm not going to really kill them over, over something like that. It's not like it's 100 candle, 100 foot light, like it's a spotlight sitting over there. It's just some dim light. How's the board feel about the light spillage?
Yeah, as far as the lighting of it near the open space, I'm okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be a little different if it was in my backyard or my rear kitchen window.
Exactly.
I think we can give them a pass on this one. Now, Larry, I want you to move the light 6 inches to the west. All right. Any other comments or questions for Natalie? Okay. Larry, anything you want to present or talk about?
I believe regarding the site, Natalie explained it, basically all the changes and everything. But I believe up to the site for the site engineer to explain it even further, exactly all the changes and everything.
Oh, I'm sorry, Larry. I thought this was your project.
Yeah, I was doing the architectural part of it and everything. But regarding the site, I don't have a lot to add particularly on the site. I think Natalie has nailed it, particularly all the changes and everything, and how we addressed what we did address and what we did not address, which we're gonna send later. But basically, I believe I don't think I have anything to add regarding the site in particular.
I mean, the real issue for this board is the setbacks at this point. as well?
The setbacks, I believe, we're gonna be able to shift the building. It's really minor. I don't think it's worth to go for a variance or anything. We could easily shift a little bit towards the tennis court and comply with the 40 feet.
Okay.
Or shave off that's just the roof overhang for the community room. So it's just an outdoor patio with a large roof, either make the roof a little bit shorter. I think it's now about 16 feet along the entire building. Or just move it a little bit close to the tennis court. You have plenty of place. And this was just a technical error, and we'll comply with the setbacks.
Yeah, that is just make the tennis court small and everybody thinks there's gonna be a great tennis court.
So I'll be playing pickleball.
You're gonna play pickleball.
We'll call it a pickleball, make it a pickleball court and you're done.
Yeah. I believe that's, I don't know, was the other one. It's called a multi-purpose. Originally, I think it was called a multi-purpose court, which basically means not particularly tennis. Yeah.
Hey, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Natalie. Sorry.
I just wanted to sort of clarify on the setback issue. So I think there are essentially like two guidelines for the applicant, and it's not really clear to me right now which one they should be following. So is it sort of the setbacks that are set forth in the conservation cluster subdivision, or the setbacks that were approved as part of that original building, like where it was located? And in that case, it sort of changes the degree of waiver that may need waiver or, relief, I guess we could say, that would be required. So, the front yard was an obvious example just because it was non-complying with either. The side yard is a little different where, the 54 feet was originally the most restrictive side yard setback, but the conservation cluster permits 30 feet setback. So then, the 37 feet that's proposed, is that complying? So I think, unless Kelly wants to weigh in, I think maybe we can solicit Gary for an interpretation, or unless the board has some obvious feedback on it and feels like it's very clear, or Kelly can opine.
Yeah, so, we took a look at this. We think that a plain reading of the code requires that it comply with the original approval for the clubhouse. But if the board is still uncertain, I think you should probably then consult Mike for an interpretation. If they can't shift it to comply with that or with what Mike says applies, then variances would be necessary. But it sounds like Larry does say that there is some wiggle room. So like I said, I think we look at it as the setbacks from the original approval apply just based on the wording of the code. But if you would like an interpretation, we can certainly send this to Mike and request that.
I think, Kelly, what we'll do is we'll look at it on our end to first see what's practical from a design point of view. If it looks like we can make the design work, then obviously there's no issue. If it looks like it's going to be a problem to make the design work, then I'll reach out to you and I can discuss what are the applicable provisions and what we think the minimum mandated requirements are. And if we need to, we can ask for an interpretation. Hopefully that won't be necessary. We can just come to an understanding as to what the applicable requirements are. Obviously, we're going to try to avoid seeking any variances. We'd like to get this thing through with just proceedings before this board. So I think that's the way we ought to approach it, unless others on the team who are on the line or on this hearing right now see it differently. So, all right. Go ahead, James.
Yes, I'm James Martinez. I'm representing the engineering company doing the site work. I also agree with Steve, trying to move through this and get it done with as little variance as possible. The only one that might be a little bit tough would be the lot coverage. I went through and everything that's impervious on the site has been considered for the coverage calculations, the walls, walkways, courts, parking lot, etc. All that has been considered, and I broke it down to the team, listing all the square footage of everything, and we can try to parse it down to get close to that approved number, but it's a large difference, probably about a little over 9,000 square feet. I think reconfiguring the parking lot had a lot to do with that increase from the approved, from the previous iteration. We also utilized more space kind of downwards towards the entrance of the community there. But as far as the front yard setback goes, we have no problem trying to make that work with the 40 or even possibly the 42 approved. And as well as the side yard, if we could, depending on the interpretation, that 30 feet that we meet, that'd be great. 54 would require a significant more amount of reconfiguring the site in order to get that to work.
So obviously, we're going to take a look at these things and get back to you on that. And I agree, Chris, by the way. I think those are the most significant issues. So we'll be looking at them carefully. Let me jump back, if I can, to one of the points that Natalie raised earlier, which was with respect to the gatehouse. It's not been detailed in our submissions to date. But what we would like to do is switch from a human occupied gatehouse to a virtual security type system where somebody is operating and attending that gatehouse, but not physically in the building. That would enable us to not have to install the bathroom near there. And would enable us to not have to run an easement, as I understand it, through the buffer area. So there are a number of benefits to be achieved from that while still being able to provide the requisite security that's needed by having simply today's modern technology kick in. Obviously, when this was originally approved, there were no virtual doormen and there were no virtual security systems. I think they're pretty well state of the art now. And so we would like to discuss with you the ability or our possibility of switching over to something like that in order to enable us to have a more simplified design, particularly regarding water, plumbing, and the service that would need to be run in order to have a gatehouse have a human being in it. Is that something that we ought to just simply roll into this application, which I think probably makes sense, but I don't want to derail the process either.
Let's Kelly, because I know the original approvals and the filings with the offering plans all have it being a manned gate.
You know, I would have to take a look at that. That might be something you don't want to roll into this one. You might want to have that be as a separate application.
Okay.
To not slow this down in any way. And also you could gather all of that information and like I was saying, I'll be looking at it too, to pull it together to see what was required and if that's something, you know.
Can I just ask a question? If it was originally approved to be a manned gatehouse, why was the gatehouse originally not built like that?
I'm not sure what was done originally, Mr. DeLuca. I'm just not sure about that. I was not involved in the project at that time, so I do not know what was originally done and why. But certainly we want to take care of that now. I agree, Kelly, with your thoughts that perhaps it's best handled separately. One of the questions that I had is it the kind of thing, I hope not, that has to go back to the village board? And I know that there was a human being to be in there, but I think that was because that was the only type of security that was provided at the time. So we can talk about how it's to be handled and addressed, but my inclination, I think, Kelly, is the same as yours, is that it's best to be handled separately so we don't slow this thing down. And then we can address all of the issues, both in terms of who has to approve it and get the background, Tommy, as to what happened and when. So
Appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get you that information. I just don't want to say something now when I just don't know the answer.
Understandable.
Right. One question that I had is, do you think that we are at a stage, given the nature of the comments, where we could schedule a public hearing? Is that appropriate at this time?
How does the board feel? Yes, go ahead, Rich.
I have a question. I don't want to put a wrinkle in this because I was on the planning board when this was approved 15 years ago. And I went through my notes and the minutes. And I asked the question about 9 months to a year ago, and I don't recall getting an answer. And the question I had was, when the planning board approved this 15 plus years ago, I remember there was an agreement in that document that the developer would relinquish control and ownership and management control of the common areas after 10 years to an HOA. Has that changed? Because it's well over 10 years. And I just want to make sure that, you know, we're doing a thing here. But I do remember after so many years, I believe it was 10, that ownership and management control of the common areas would be under the HOA. So someone could check that out before we go too far with a public hearing.
Sure. My understanding is that, first of all, there is an HOA without a doubt. And secondly, my understanding is that the HOA does have ownership and control of some of the common areas. I don't know if it is all, because not all of the phases have been completed. And there are a variety of requirements that need to be met. I don't think that this is a all or nothing type proposition. As one moves along, there are various elements of the project that go to the HOA. I had a question, for example, just today that I discussed with my client about roads. So these things have happened. I don't think it has been completed because the developer is still doing work on the project. And if you want to know which ones or which areas, what types have been are under the control of the HOA, I can get that information for you for the next time we get together.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking, because the gatehouse is completed. I mean, it's not operational. It was completed, and so is the clubhouse. So in that definition you just described, if it was completed but not operational, to me, it was completed. So I just want to make sure that the applicant who's proposing something before the planning board really has the authority to do. And we should we have someone from the HOA on this call saying, yeah, I agree. I just want to make sure that whatever was agreed 15 years ago, that, you know, we're proceeding correctly. That's all.
Understood. And just to clarify, my understanding is there is no gatehouse that has been constructed. I'm not sure that that is everybody's understanding, but I don't believe there is physically a gatehouse.
I was talking about the one across from the high school.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
there is one there. There's nothing inside it. It's a shell, but
it's complete. It's completed. It's not occupied.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to clarify this for you. I think that there are two. There's one for the active adults, and then there's another one. So I think we're referring to the other one, but we'll get this nailed down for you. I don't want there to be any confusion.
Yeah, go look, Steve, because the one on Ninninger was supposed to be unmanned, and the one across from the high school is supposed to be manned.
Okay.
You have two different ones.
Two different ones. That's right.
And the one from the high school is the one that we're looking to put, if we need to put the sewer in, correct?
if it has to be manned, if we can't do this.
Yeah, and that's one, why was it built without? All right.
In their defense, they're now the second and third developers / owners of this project.
Yeah, I wasn't around for the earlier one, so.
They can.
Well, we'll get this straightened out for you so that it's completely clear what's been done and what we're proposing to change and exactly where. So there's
I don't think we're quite ready for the public hearing.
Definitely not.
Well, I think the issue we have, Steve, is with the setbacks. Your plan could change between now and then based on if you can make the setback requirements. You may have to go to a pickleball court because the tennis court gives you too much coverage. I guess it's an example, right? I'm just saying.
That's great.
Right, that's right. They'll yield Olympic quality pickleball players.
Yeah. So we want to move the project along too. I just don't want to get caught up. So
I hear you.
I'd rather you give us a set of plans that meets the setback requirements. So
Okay.
we don't need any variances for coverage or setbacks or anything like that. And as soon as we see that, I think then we can go right into the public hearing. I think overall, the board doesn't have too many qualms with the plan, right? The overall layout of the club.
Yeah.
I think everybody's okay with it. It's just, let's make sure you can build what you need to actually build, and then, let's not come back and be like, oops, we got to cut off, 6 feet of the pool or move the pool to the parking lot and the parking lot where the pool is. Kind of drastic, but you get what I'm saying, right?
Yep, I do.
Around on us.
All right, so we'll need to get you some submissions. We're going to try to get them in relatively quickly. If we get them in timely, is it possible for us to come back to you on the 15th?
You'd have to get them in by Friday at close of business.
Okay, all right, well, we'll see if we can do that. That may be tight. Otherwise, we'll just have to go for the next meeting after that.
Ask everybody to click their mouse.
Yeah, I have a question for Kelly. What Steve just said, would we be okay with him getting a letter from the current HOA president saying we're in communication with the current developer to rebuild the common area clubhouse, gatehouse, something from the HOA that says, we've been in communication with the developer and we're in agreement with his proposal.
Are you talking about the gatehouse or the clubhouse?
Anything that's any common area. I'm talking about the completed common areas. To me, the clubhouse was completed and the gatehouse across from the high school, it just wasn't operational. And I remember being on the planning board. The word was it'd be in control of the HOA once completed. So
Yes.
that's the question I had.
Yeah, so I think that I need to look into that, and Steve needs to look into that to find out what the language actually says.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then a letter from the HOA president would be fine.
Thank you.
Yep. I do want to mention, Steve, if you're submitting these new documents, if you could also, I know Natalie touched on it, but provide a copy of all of the easements for the site to determine if any need to be modified because it's being realigned or whatever. And also if there's any new easements that need to be provided. I know Natalie mentioned having a map, and then you and I could work on some easement language there too.
Okay,
But that's not necessarily due by Friday, because that's more of what we would be looking at, but the
Right.
sooner the better would be great.
okay. And then you and I also need to catch up about seniors that you and I discussed,
Yes.
right? Okay.
And is it possible to get a summary of the history of this application so that those of us who are newer on the board and haven't been part of the previous discussions have an idea more of the history? It doesn't have to be a formal document. It just has to be something so we have a better appreciation.
I think War and Peace would be a shorter.
I was about to say that I would begin that narrative by saying in the beginning, because it might be biblical in nature.
You're not kidding. And I'm only on the board for a year.
Pulling after he gave that narrative because it would bankrupt some countries. Would it be maybe just recirculating the current resolutions that got us to where we are today?
There's like 13. So that might not be the easiest. but I think in some of Natalie's more recent memos, and Natalie, correct me if I'm wrong, usually set forth a bit of a history. But if that doesn't work, I am happy to send out all 13, I think it is, resolutions. But let me talk to Natalie first, because I don't want to drown you in a War and Peace amount of paperwork. If we can easily make it like a bullet point thing.
Right, I'm not looking for a formal document.
Okay.
I just want a better understanding.
Right. I think, Michael, one thing that perhaps can give you a little bit of comfort is that, at least in terms of the matters that are before you now, we're not looking to make some kind of wholesale changes to the project. These are changes that are confined principally, especially if you put the gatehouse matter aside, they're just confined to the design and configuration of this clubhouse, which always was required. And so we're simply looking to implement that element of the project.
Yeah, that part I
So
appreciate.
that's, that's where we are in this.
It's being hung up on the clubhouse getting approved too. So let's not forget about that little carrot that's hanging
Right.
out.
Yes, we know that this is an important element of the project.
And I believe this needs to be done before any other permits be issued, correct?
There's a number of permits being held up.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I think we all are on the same page of wanting to get this done. That's for sure.
All right, so I think you got your homework, sharpen your mouses. Hopefully you can get that stuff in by Friday. If you get in by Friday, then we can get you on the next, we'll get you on the next agenda. Otherwise, the July meeting.
Fair enough.
Anything else for this applicant from the board?
No.
Okay. All right.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is, oh, I lost my agenda. The Spitzer Millwork. This is ARB. This is a special permit and ARB discussion for the Spitzer Millwork showroom. This is, you know what? I lost my whole agenda, but this is on Route 32, across from the school district building. Sorry, I'll get my agenda back in a minute. Larry, why don't you go ahead? We know what you're.
Yeah. Thanks. So I'll start off. I did provide a new submission with a lot of new information, answering, I believe, most of the questions the board had. I believe that was last month. So to start off, we did a revised site plan, which is on the, I know the page numbers got a little confused, but it's on the third PDF, third page. In particular, the most important changes is that we, as per request of the board, we removed all the parking from the front. All the parking are now to the sides of the building. Number two, also extremely important, we provided a privacy fence on both sides of the building in order to hide all the cars that are process of being fixed from the street view. So they're going to be designated parking for those cars. Those are not going to be like the customer parking. This is strictly going to be for the storage of cars while they're being fixed. Additional thing is we added, the board asked for tow truck designated parking. We provided designated parking for the tow trucks. Obviously, we put that in the privacy fence as well, so it's not obvious from the road. Additional, we added, the board asked for an enclosed dumpster area. We moved it from the back of the building towards the front. So the garbage truck could easily pick up the garbage, and they don't have to wait for somebody to open the gate or because we added the gate to block off the whole back of the building. That's most of the changes regarding the site. Floor plans did not change. The next thing we did do changes is we showed on our submission that all the signs are gonna comply with the required square footage. We're not gonna seek any variances right now for the signage. We're gonna comply with the 10 square feet for the main sign and 4 square feet for the smaller ones. Additionally, I did do a calculation the board asked at the previous meeting, I should provide a calculation showing that we don't cover more than 20% of the existing windows, because our proposal shows a plastic vinyl in the front, a black plastic vinyl with the name, with some wording which says moldings, doors, closets, rails. You can see that on page 8. So on page 9, I did provide a calculation showing that we're covering less than 20% of the existing windows. Other than that, additionally, we showed a sample how the privacy fence is going to look with the greenery in the fence in order to hide all the cars that are being fixed from the road. And I believe that was all the changes we did.
So Larry, thank you for sharpening your pencil and making those changes that were requested and doing the calculations and stuff on the vinyl coverage and things along that line. It's much appreciated by the board. Overall, with the changes, I'm okay, I think, with what you're looking to do there now, and then it's going to be cleaned up and shielded from public view.
Yep.
What's the rest of the board think? Say, comment.
Excuse me, I'm just wondering why, I mean, I understand why, but I'm wondering if the fence, I guess on the north and south, if they can extend, or if they want to extend somewhat towards the rear of the property, they kind of stop. And I understand, you know, you're kind of matching the adjacent buildings or wrapping the proposed dumpsters, but I'm just wondering if they can go back slightly to obscure a little bit more from those alleys and the side yards.
We can possibly do that. The reason we didn't do that, I believe, if you take a look in green, you see the adjacent building. I don't think you'll see a lot of cars when there's the building and then there's the fence. But if we wanted to cover those 3 spots, to, let's say, approximately the corner of the parking lot, the corner of the, what is it? Yeah, northwest parking, that corner, we can add that.
Yeah, that would be my comment on how the rest of the board feels.
So I mean, basically you're saying you want to see the fence from the property line pretty much to the building, correct?
I believe his question was regarding to extend, like the back of the dumpsters, there's like that little fence, the little fence right in back of it, not on the 2 sides.
Yeah,
Extend that all the way to to cover additional 3 spots.
Yeah,
I do that, I believe, and I believe you won't be able to see any cars, particularly when you have the building in the front so close to the property.
Yeah, I would say that condition on that side, 3 spots. And personally, I would say the same for the maybe 2 or 3 for the south side of the other side of the lot, side yard as well. And is there a reason there are bollards, where it's transitions to bollards instead of the fencing continue to the building, the face of the building?
Correct. I believe because first of all, there are not going to be any cars parked over there.
Mm-hmm.
So we covered already the shield. But the people entering the auto repair shop number 2, I don't want them to have to walk through a fence. It's gonna look, it's not the proper way of having a person walk into a place. So if once he parks his car, there's bollards, so he can't basically drive all the way to the door. I didn't want to mix the people's cars and the cars that get it fixed. So we put those bollards so they can't come into that area, but they can walk in.
Got it. Understood.
Anything else from the board? Have questions, comments, concerns, feedback?
Yeah, I have 2.
Yeah, go ahead.
I like the new monument sign on page 10. My question is, all the old signage in the rear of the building on the buildings about the auto repair, demolition, collision, they're going to go away, correct?
Definitely. This is definitely gonna go away. Not gonna be any signs other than what
The
is
ones in-
proposed in the front. I believe they took it off already, if I believe.
I was there yesterday or day before.
Correct. So everything's gonna be taken off, cleaned up. As you see on page number 9, we're gonna paint those bricks black. It's gonna have a sharp look. It's gonna be clean.
Okay, and the other question I have on page 10, on the monument sign, the light on the top looks like it's facing the building. Are you gonna light up the sign itself? Or,
No, that is not for the sign. That's to cover the lot. That's to cover like the front area. That was never.
so you're not gonna have any lighting for the monument sign itself?
It is gonna have, as it says, if you see number 10, the sign itself is gonna be
It's backlit, right?
internally illuminated double-faced pylon cabin, which means the sign itself is gonna have a double pan, and it's gonna have in between, it's gonna have lighting.
I think it's on page 9. He has the details of the lighting, where that may be the for the tree.
No, I think it's when it says page 10 underneath.
Okay, yeah.
Of that particular sign. Page 9 is the signs that is on the building. He's talking about the freestanding sign close to the road, and it says internally illuminated double-faced pylon cabinet sign, which means it's illuminated in between the two faces of the sign.
Yeah, that, are there any restrictions that it must be shut off at a certain hour? Or can it be on 24 hours, the new monument lighting sign? I'm just asking the board a question.
I don't think currently there's any restrictions on how long that sign can be on for. Typically, we'll add a restriction in the resolution that it's, to be illuminated during the hours of business or until 10 o'clock at night or something like that.
Okay.
Oh, and just before I forget, I think Natalie's going to bring it up too, but the building inspector has confirmed that the 84.6% impervious surface coverage is a pre-existing non-conforming. So it's illegal. It's legal to keep it that way. They don't have to change anything when it goes to there. Any other questions, comments, or feedback for Larry on the design? I haven't forgotten about you yet, Natalie.
I was wondering, I have to be honest.
Larry came so well prepared that we just got right into talking with Larry. We just,
I understand.
So if no other questions or concerns for Larry, why don't we go right into Natalie's comment she had here. So.
All right, I'll take over then. So I appreciate the discussion that the board just had, and actually I think some of you raised some of our questions as well, or at least clarified some of the things that we were looking for clarification on. So I did want to just kind of discuss the threshold issues that we discussed at the last appearance of the applicant. And as you indicated, some of them have been resolved based on opinions from the building inspector. Specifically, he opined that the coverage is a legally existing non-conforming condition. We also submitted a request for an opinion on loading berths required for this application, and that opinion indicated that that requirement would be based off of the total building area. So based on that, I think that a loading berth is required for this application. So the site plan should be updated to reflect that requirement. Some of the other issues that we discussed had to do with whether or not the auto repair use could be considered a legally existing use, or if it required further review under your code. And I'll kind of defer to Kelly on a little bit of that, but I think because there are 2 auto repair uses being proposed, that that kind of expands the intensity of the use, if you would, and you could consider sort of the site plan impacts as well as the special permit impacts as part of your review. So that was one of the things. The other thing that remains outstanding is there is a small encroachment to the 50-foot open to the sky front yard requirement. And the applicant previously indicated that was based on takings from the New York State DOT. It's less than a 2-foot extension of the overhang in that front yard. So it's not clear if the applicant wants to try to alleviate that non-conforming condition by changing the overhang, or if, you know, some other variance or waiver would be required. So we'll defer to Kelly on that. One of the other things that we wanted to bring up has to do with there are some existing issues, or some of the plan does not conform with your requirements for landscaping per the code. So with the issue of the coverage being resolved, it's not clear if the landscaping then kind of goes hand in hand. And I think some of that, like one of the things that we talked about at the last meeting, is if there was an opportunity for the applicant to reduce the impervious coverage by, you know, essentially removing some of the paved area in front of the building. You know, that would help the plan in a number of ways. One, by reducing the impervious coverage. Two, by increasing compliance with your landscaping. And three, removing sort of the essentially front or parking in the front yard is restricted, so it would just eliminate the opportunity for anybody to do that altogether. So that's some of the things we discussed, and I know you know, the board can kind of consider that with the applicant, you know, and what you're allowed to do. So the other thing I wanted to mention is I know Larry revised the plan to remove the parking directly in front of the building. And one of the things, there is some parking still shown on either side of the lot line within the front yard. So I think technically that parking also needs to be removed. And I looked a little closer at some of the judicial review of this, and I think it was taken into account that whole swath of area should not include front parking in the front yard. So that should be removed on a future submission. And I think the applicant has already demonstrated that there's sufficient parking on the site to support the proposed uses, although we did ask for clarification on what would technically be required for the auto repair. So that's one of the things I wanted to just bring up. The other sort of more threshold issues, we wanted to, or we're requesting that the applicant actually build out the parking. So essentially stripe the lot, which would, you know, maintain the orderliness of the site. We've also requested that the applicant confirm that the size of the designated tow truck stalls are sufficient for those vehicles. We noted that 2 handicap stalls are proposed in an area that the applicant previously designated for deliveries. So it's not clear if when the loading berth is provided that the location of the handicap spaces should then be shifted. So that's something we'll look for on a revised plan. We also discussed the fence that's being proposed currently. So again, I think it's the intention is for it to provide screening. You know, we discussed thought you should consider whether or not it was appropriate to maintain circulation of the site and sort of around the building. You know, how the parking was distributed. So Larry kind of already discussed how consumers looking to enter the auto repair would, you know, kind of use that space designated by the bollards, which makes sense in my opinion. And then also the dumpster location, understanding, you know, it's on the opposite side of the fence. So, you know, refuse collection could occur. One of the things that we had asked for confirmation was whether or not the fence extended along the southern property line. So I think Evan sort of weighed in on that and asked for an extension of that, at least for 3 stalls, which, you know, we think is appropriate. We noted that with respect to the lighting, there are fixtures shown on the plan now, and it's not actually clear to me, I think at least for the sign that's existing, but the other 2 areas along the southern property line, I'm not sure if that's proposed or existing, so we'll look for the applicant to confirm that. On the sign issue, We know that the applicant intends to comply with the size for the millwork showroom sign, but the other tenant panels, they've kind of indicated like to be determined for the size. So I would suggest, if you approve this rendering and the sign as it is, that they should demonstrate that they could comply with the area requirements of those tenant panels and or remove them altogether, so that you can kind of consider it at a future date. The other thing I wanted to discuss about signage was the window signs. So Larry, I know you provided sort of the areas for the glass, as well as the existing vinyl to remain and then the proposed sticker location. So when we did the calculation, we added both the existing vinyl plus the proposed sticker location, and used that to create the ratio for the percentage essentially, and that was more than 20%. So it seems like it is non-complying with the code requirements.
Again, the code says that it needs to be 20% of window. The top vinyl is not a window, was never a window, and it's just a vinyl piece that is inside.
So the top vinyl that you're referring to is the green, like the dark green outline, I guess, on that rendering, page 10.
Let me open that up. Give me 1 second. Yeah, so the dark green is a vinyl. It's not a glass. If you take a look, you'll see it. Take a look at page number 7. Take a look at page number 7. You'll see the building as it is about. I think that is about 2018. So you see the white vinyl. It's not a glass covered with vinyl. It's just a piece of vinyl.
Okay. Yeah, because then in the rendering on page 8, it shows sort of like a black sticker similar to what would be behind.
We're gonna paint that existing white vinyl. We're gonna paint it black. But take a look how it was in 2018 or whatever. It's not a glass.
Okay. Yeah, it sort of seemed, I do see what you're saying. It just sort of seeed like that was just an extension of the window area and there was just an additional sticker. So, so as long as the board can, kind of get along with that, then, I don't necessarily take any exception. Okay, so then the next one I wanted to talk to you about. So our memo also lists now, and it's something that we discussed at the last meeting, is the code has certain requirements for auto repair garages. So we've listed the requirements that we think are applicable to this particular application. And one of the things that I wanted to raise is the code requires screening of vehicles needing service or that are unlicensed and limits that to 5 parking or essentially vehicles per premises. So one of the things is, so if I didn't say that clearly, I'm just going to repeat it. So there should be screening of essentially 5 vehicles that are either unlicensed or require repair. And there's actually specific requirements for what the screening should be. So let me just go back to my memo really quick and read that for you.
Is this what you're saying? You think they need should we determine that they need the 10 or the 5?
There's that part of it. Yep. So since there's 2 auto repair uses, could there then be 10 vehicles needing repair essentially, or is it really restricted to 5 like per the lot? And then also in that code requirement, it says, not landscaping. Yeah, so it says no more than 5 wrecked, partially dismantled, or unlicensed vehicles shall be kept on the premises, and all such vehicles shall be kept within a building or concealed behind a board fence at least 6 feet high, and then that shall be erected and maintained in a manner approved by the code enforcement officer. So with that kind of specific requirement for a board fence, right now the applicant's proposing the chain link fence with privacy screening. So, I'm not sure that there is discretion here, but we can look into that a little closer. Maybe Kelly and I can kind of put our heads together. But again, it's supposed to be only 5 wrecked vehicles. And right now where the screening is, it's, quite a few more. So that's something for you to consider.
I hate to say it, but this building will have more screening for cars undergoing repair or wrecked than the other two repair places on 32 do right now. I mean, the one shop has no screening. It has a bunch of cars parked in the front of it. And the other shop had probably 50 or 60 cars, and they were all behind the chain link fence. So, I mean, I know you have to see if there's discretion there, but this is a step in the right direction compared to the other two repair shops on 32.
Sure. And no exception, Chris. I think it's, with this code provision, I think it's supposed to, it's intended to limit the number of wrecked cars and provide that sort of solid screening. So I think the, intention is good here and, even on the applicant's part. So
I do have a question with the open sky, with the 1.5 feet into the open sky requirement, or how is that not considered a pre-existing non-conforming? Because this building's been there like that for
Well, that's actually something that I need to work with Mike Piniella on. I need to take a look at what was previously approved, make sure that was part of the approval. And then I need to get from the applicant or find from the county clerk. They say that it became lessened because of the DOT's taking of land along 32. So I need to have both of those and compare them to make sure that that establishes it as a legally pre-existing non-conforming condition.
I mean, I've only been here 6 years, but that building's been like that since we've been here. Rich, I don't know how long that building has been.
Yeah, it's been like that, I think, since I started with the village in 2007.
Right, so we can look into that then to see if that's a legally pre-existing.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's going to be, but I need that documentation to let the board know that.
Okay.
right. And I think essentially it was conforming when the building was constructed, but because of these DOT takings, that's what shifted it to the non-conforming condition.
Yeah.
And the loading berth, it could just be a painted area, correct? It could just be a striped area in the parking lot that says loading zone. It doesn't
Yes.
need to be a berth, right?
There are requirements in the code for sizes, but I think a striped area is sufficient. Typically, you would see some signage associated with it, but again, it's some of that's discretionary.
Like 45 feet or whatever, something like that. But I wanted to make sure it was just a striping. We're not actually requiring him to build a loading.
Yeah, no structure or anything that I'm aware of or that I'm familiar with in the code.
If I can I have a question on that loading zone. That's for supplies or loading zone for people to drop off people? That's for supply for
Yeah, it's intended for deliveries.
deliveries. Okay.
Now the landscaping, I know, is something that's come up. You look at the shopping center directly to the left. There's really nothing there. There's a couple of shrubs and a piece of some grass in the front. The shopping center to the right pretty much is the same. I think it would almost look weird if we said take the asphalt up and put a bunch of shrubbery where the parking used to be. Like, it just wouldn't fit almost. If you look at the street, it's gonna be like, oh, what doesn't belong here is this big planted spot in the middle. I mean, I am concerned.
Yeah.
I am concerned about people parking there per se, because it's still.
So that's the only thing. How do you stop it from turning into an eventual parking spot?
Like trips.
The area could be striped if the planning board isn't really keen on the, idea of adding landscaping in that area. But really, I mean, I think the landscaping could be done tastefully, even on the sides, creating more of a uniform parking area, rectangular or whatever versus conforming with the lot lines. But again, that's completely to your discretion. No.
Yeah, I
And
disagree
it
on that
also,
one.
it also becomes bit of an enforcement nightmare if it's not striped or torn up for Mike to go in there and say, parking can't happen there because everybody usually parks the closest place to the door. I mean, I do
Whether
it too.
legal or not.
Right.
A simple solution would be a raised bed garden instead of ripping up the asphalt.
Yeah, I'm
And
with
also, if
Michael
you
on
start to
that.
rip up the asphalt, you don't know what's under it. There might be a lot of remediation.
Yeah, I'm
What
just,
about a curb line in there?
I just want to think, something that would be minimal and not make the applicant go through a huge landscaping project as well.
That's why maybe like a curb line?
Well,
Or a raised bed would do it too, and also be more attractive.
Yeah, but at a point like Chris was saying is it would almost be out of place between those two shopping centers.
No, I disagree. I think there's so much asphalt over there. It's like, there's just so much that I think it'll be helpful to the, it might be out of place, but it'll be helpful to the larger 32 corridor.
Yeah, a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
If I might jump in again, my client wasn't looking to spend a lot of money. He, as it is proposing an expensive fence that wasn't there, and a lot of the other improvements. We're gonna stripe the area with a no parking fire zone. Obviously, there might be a person, most people, or 90% of the people, if it's striped or it reads fire zone, and there's a parking space right across it or right next to it, I don't believe they'll park. And if you'll have that 1% who's gonna park, again, there's the neighboring property has, the one to the right has parking in the front. The one to the left has parking in the front. The school district building right across has parking in the front. Next to the school district building, everybody basically that touches or is across or is even at an angle of this building has parking in the front. If you pull up on Google Maps, everybody has. So if you can have that once a week, that person is gonna kind of ignore the signage, the striping, and park. It's not going to be like an eyesore. Everybody has at least 40 parking spaces in front of all their neighbors, So, I mean, my client wouldn't want really to have to put in landscaping and force him again to do that when just everybody has it. He doesn't need that parking. He's going to stripe it. He's going to put fire zone. He's going to put signs. I believe that should be sufficient.
So another way the board could handle it is, if I could just jump in and talk about another part. So what this building is actually approved for, we were talking about the uses, and I'm going to link it back to the landscaping. So just give me a second. It was actually initially approved as a car agency building, which is not really, it was never defined anywhere back in 1969 when it was approved for that. So I don't really know why they used that phrase, but it was approved for a car agency building. That was kind of interpreted by the town at that time to be the car dealership. Then back in 2011 is when the body shop came to be, and the building inspector at that time said that the body shop was permitted as an accessory use to the car agency building. So the body shop was accessory to the car dealership. So what they're proposing is 2 auto body repair shops, which actually were not principal uses on the site. So that is the way the board's reviewing it, is proper as the 2 new auto body repair shops. One way that this could be looked at is as part of your special permit. And it could have, you have the special permit reviewed on an annual basis. And if there's a number of complaints or a number of violations, then the applicant would have to return to you. So if you require the striping and the no parking fire lane, or whatever the language Mr. Hartman used was that was going to be there, if you require that and you find, and the building inspector finds that that is continuously violated, it's never complied with, then after a year, you could bring them back in under your special permit authority and then talk about landscaping at that time. But if it doesn't turn out to be a problem, then it doesn't turn out to be a problem. But that's just another option for the board to consider.
Okay with that.
I'm okay.
See how I tied that back to the landscaping?
That was real good. That was
All right.
Well, that one, Kelly, for a minute. I thought
Well, the last time we talked about this also, we were trying to differentiate between a repair shop and a body shop.
Yeah.
Because a body shop that involves painting has a lot of solvents involved, and fume hoods and painting booths, all that kind of capture to avoid having emissions into the air.
Yes, and I mean, typically a body shop is usually considered, in most cases, accessory to a repair shop, but it also requires some approvals from the DEC, which Natalie can weigh in on more. But so that would be covered too by any general condition that compliance needs to be met with the DEC for any permits, any filtration, I don't know, carbon filters, whatever is used if they do decide to go that route. But I think what is shown on the plans now, I remember Mr. Hartman wasn't sure what his client wanted, but it does show 2 repair shops. So I think that's the way that this board is looking at it. I don't think body shop is currently proposed unless I'm mistaken.
Oh, it would be, the approval would be what's drawn on Mr. Hartman's drawing is repair shop 1, repair shop 2, and.
So then will not be a body shop.
I'll if I could jump in on that, I believe it will be a body shop. So I am gonna change that. He did find a tenant. I remember the last time we discussed, if he doesn't have a tenant, we might disconnect the whole back and kind of go only for planning board for the front. But meanwhile, this month he did find a tenant, particularly for the back spot.
Now, was that tenant a body shop or a repair shop?
It's a body shop. And regarding all the special permits, of course, I believe that is done once we get the planning board approval. We'll get all the DEC approvals and for the spray booth and comply it with, usually that is done with the building department before we get a permit to kind of occupy the space.
And now, as far as the body shop goes, according to code from what I'm hearing, it'll only be allowable 5 spots for wrecked cars or whatever to be repaired.
Parked
Natalie?
outside.
So technically, that code requirement is for auto repair shops and, or auto repair garages, I think is the title of that section of the code. And really the code actually doesn't distinguish between auto body or auto repair in your bulk tables. So I think what Kelly was sort of describing is that, you know, auto repair could technically include auto body. However, you know, some of your special permit conditions or even requirements by other agencies have to be met for that specific use.
And that will be still, again, only 5 spots for that. Whatever they're gonna call it, body shop, repair shop. Correct?
Right. Yeah, technically the code limits 5 wrecked, dismantled, or unlicensed vehicles per premises.
And then it has to be determined if it's per premise or per business, correct?
Right. I think that's something that Natalie and I need to delve a little deeper in and work with Mike if we need him to weigh in on it as well.
All right, cool, good.
Yeah.
And A102 has to be updated to, or whatever one is going to be, to show the body shop how it's going to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Big difference between the two.
Your site plan only shows 2 auto repair. It does not show a body shop. So if we went with the plans you gave us right now, the only thing you would get approval for is what's on the drawings, and that's not a body shop.
Okay, okay, I'll change that. Not a problem.
Now, how's the board feel about what Kelly had said about the special permitting process, which is a normal process for this board when we issue any special permit? It's reviewed on an annual basis or sooner if there's a number of conditions or complaints or problems with the building inspector.
I'm okay with that. If we could review that, I mean, if there's an issue that comes up and it's reviewed annually, yeah, that's fine, in my opinion.
I'm okay too.
Kevin, sorry, Evan, getting late and we're still not done.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Michael?
Yes, I'm okay. I like the contingency or sooner if there's an issue.
All right. What else do we have to talk about on this? I know this is something, seems like a lot of homework still here. As far as filing up on pre-existing non-conforming and stuff like that.
Oh, by the way, the lighting for the signage, I think in our code, it says it can be up until midnight. If it does, if the establishment doesn't open past midnight.
Anything open in Woodbury past midnight? I think they roll the sidewalks up around 9:45.
8:45.
Well, that's something we could put into the final resolution too, as far as hours that the lighting is gonna be on, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we've done it before, brother.
Yeah,
So think about it. And if the board has hours that they're thinking or that they want them dimmed, or they, however you want to handle that, let me know.
what are the proposed hours of the mill shop?
Proposed hours usually for a repair shop, usually it's
Not the repair, for the millworking shop.
for the millwork, it's a regular 9 to 6. That's,
9 to
I mean,
6.
it's regular, it's a showroom. It's usually not 9. People don't shop. Usually showrooms are more like a little bit later, 10 or 11. But again, I'll get the client for that. If you want me to put that on the plan, I'll put that. Typically a showroom is 9 to 6 or 9 to 7, something like that.
I know it's still need a public hearing. How does the board feel? Do we have enough information? Oh, did I just see you shake your head, Kelly? Oh, okay. Your video stuttered for a minute. And it
Oh,
looked-
no, I set my hand on the laptop and it shifted.
I was like, oh, okay. Kelly really has a strong.
Kelly's going, no, not yet.
I'm like, wait, no, not saying anything.
How does the board feel about a public hearing? Do we feel we have enough information to schedule?
No,
Yes, Mike.
Yes, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good.
So you need to get a little information back to us, Larry. So
Yeah, definitely. I'll get all of that, particularly regarding what I have written down is the board has discussed the loading zone. Remove the spots entirely in front of the lot, even when the ones are on the sides, and stripe. Having the condition of being midnight or whatever condition the board is going to put on the resolution. Add on the plans the auto body shop and extend the fencing of the three sets. And obviously I'll review the notes of the memorandum and address all of these comments as well.
all right. So if we got you on July 6th, is that enough time for you to take care of everything?
I would love to have the July. Oh, it's going to be a public hearing, and you need a whole month. Definitely, I'll have it. Sure.
Yeah. Well, in order for you to be in next meeting, you'd have to have it in by Friday afternoon. And I know you're good, but I don't think you're gonna get it all in by Friday afternoon.
Correct. My question is the July 6th going to be a public hearing, right?
I will, unless the governor extends anything, it will be an in-person public hearing.
Public hearing, correct. So then you anyway need a month because of usually the advertisement and all of that. Okay, not a problem. I'll have everything ready. Yeah, for the 6th.
Okay, and I'll offer a motion to schedule a public hearing for this application for July 6th. Second by Tommy. Any questions? All in favor?
Right.
Right.
All right, so we'll see you back then, Larry.
Great. Thanks a lot. Thanks for everybody.
Thank you, sir. Have a good night.
You too.
Last and certainly not least is local law number, I believe this is actually going to be number 4 now, right, Kelly? Because number 3 was voted on last night. Local 4 of 2022, fire prevention Knox boxes, referral of local law number 3 from the Village Board of Trustees, amending chapter 154 of the Village of Woodbury entitled Fire Prevention to provide for requirement for the installation of Knox boxes. I'll just give the board a little bit of background for those that may not know what a Knox box is.
Thank you.
It is this little black box, or there are a couple different colors. They get mounted outside commercial establishments, multifamily homes. They are locked. They are typically tied into the alarm or the fire system. The fire department has a master key to them so that if they respond to one of these addresses, they can unlock these boxes, and there are keys to the building contained within. So they can get into the building without having to do damage to the facility, the elevators, the electrical rooms, or any other locked buildings. Right now, New York State has a requirement, but it's not a mandate under their fire code that buildings install a Knox box. We can ask very nicely for people to put them in, but they can tell us, no, we're not going to do it. The purpose behind this law is to say, no, you can no longer say no. It is now law that you have to install them on your commercial or the commercial 3-story families and stuff like that. So that is a quick overview of what the Knox boxes are for and what they're used for. There are all sorts of controls behind them. The keys are locked. There's a log of who can get when they're accessed, when they can be gotten to. So they're fairly secure. My fire department that I came from on the island, we have used them for years. Saved a ton of damage to people's businesses and homes. And I just think with the amount of commercial development and stuff going on in Woodbury, I think it's just something that makes common sense to have here. Natalie, I know there were some clarifications or some comments you had with this.
Yes, I'll review them pretty quickly because I think, like you said, some of them are just minor clarifications or, generally, making sure that your intent is, or the village board's intent is clear. So the first comment, and I'll just go through them one by one because I think it helps when we review these just to get your general feedback on each item if you agree or don't agree. And then that way, when you refer your comments to the village board, it's pretty clear. So the first, it just acknowledges that Chapter 154, which this is a proposed amendment to, defines the fire marshal as being the administrator and enforcer of that section of the code. We noted that the local law refers to the village fire code official and fire inspector. So we recommended that you consider consistency among the designated representatives in that chapter. So
I agree. Just some, I guess, typographical copy and paste things.
Sure. Yep. The second one, and stop me if there needs to be any further discussion, was in general, we recommend you refer the law to the ESOs, particularly the fire department, in case they have any comments on the law, since they'll be primarily using it, although that may have already been done.
Yeah, Chief Barker's already reviewed and he's given his blessing.
Great. The third, so this recommends some clarification on the proposed locations where these Knox boxes are going to be required. So the first 3A recommends consideration whether the intent of the law is to require all any or new modified buildings that are specified within that list to be equipped with Knox boxes. So some of the locations that are specified are commercial buildings, multifamily buildings, and then there's an exception that's noted, and then buildings 3 stories in height. So an example that we posed is, are all new and existing commercial buildings to have this feature? And then if so, you may want to specify when existing buildings would be required to comply. So it could be, if there was an application, a building permit application or an amendment to those commercial spaces, then it would be required to comply. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so 3A is definitely any new, it's the intent, I believe, is for every building eventually in Woodbury that meets the requirements to have one. And then 3B, anytime a building permit is required or requested for like either a tenant fit out or a change of use, or they're doing alterations or something like that, where they have to come to the building department and get a permit, this would trigger the requirement being kicked in.
Okay.
What does it entail to install one of these?
It's actually fairly simple. You go to the Knoxbox website. You put in your location. It then automatically generates an email to the building department. The building department saying so-and-so Gerber Industries has requested a Knoxbox. It's a little black box. It's about just half the size of a shoebox, maybe.
Okay.
It can be recessed into the building, so around into the brickwork. They can be.
So it's not wired or anything, correct?
We do have a requirement saying that if the law does have a requirement that if a building is equipped with an automatic fire alarm system, that it is wired and triggers a tamper alarm.
Okay.
Just so that if someone tries to screw with the box or remove the box or force their way into the box, that the central station would get a tamper. It's a tamper alarm.
Uh-huh.
And they would know somebody's trying to screw with this box. So typically you would have an automatic, some sort of fire alarm go off, and then you get this tamper alarm for the Knox box. If you just get this tamper alarm for the Knox box,
Something's up.
Something's up, and either the cops or somebody would show up and be like, "Hey, why are you trying to rip this thing off the side of the building type deal.
So I might be jumping the gun with this, but why wouldn't we require it if we're gonna put this into a law for existing buildings, if it's not that big of a deal to install?
Oh, it is. We're trying to, the law is trying, that's what Kelly was talking about. Oh, Kelly, sorry, Natalie was talking about what would trigger existing buildings to have to get them. That's what we were saying. So if an existing building comes for a tenant fit out or a building, anything that require them to come to the building department.
Oh, not from the planning board, from the building department.
Building department.
Okay,
Trigger the requirement. If they met the requirements under the law, that would trigger them
okay.
to comply.
I think there's also provision in there if multiple false alarms come in.
Multiple false alarms during the year, or if the chief, I believe there's provisions if the chief, the fire marshal, or the building inspector, code enforcement official can also deem that the building, based on high hazards, maybe it's some sort of a manufacturing, whatever, they can also say, listen, you're going to be required to have one of these boxes as well. And this is a fairly common thing, and I'm sure Evan,
I think it's a no-brainer, so.
I've dealt with these before in some of your buildings. This is a fairly common thing in New York State now. The program's probably been around for about 10 years, if not longer. So this isn't like a newfangled technology or thing that's out there. This has been around for a while.
So maybe we should let Larry know about it.
Yeah. Well, he'll know when he goes to get his building permit.
Now, I guess the one of the bigger things with this is residential. Why would it be required on a single home if it's 3 stories?
Yeah, multi-families would be required.
Multi-family, yes, but I thought I read that if it was 3 stories high, even if it wasn't multi-family, it would be required.
Because typically, if you have a 3-story building, it's going to be what they consider a high hazard building. Most residences are private dwellings are 2 stories in height. When you go,
so we're not taking into account basements.
No, it's
okay.
3 stories above ground.
Okay.
So you typically have more than one family living in those buildings, whether it's a side or like a railroad type building.
So you would not consider the basement as a story?
I personally wouldn't consider it a story. For a private dwelling.
Does our building code consider it a story?
The state does, right? Evan?
I think Mike would have to weigh in on that, but in any case, your building height is only permitted to be 35 feet, and that's above ground. So I don't think that can actually house a full 3 stories.
But if it includes the basement, it could.
Well, the basement would be underground, so
Yeah.
I would look to Mike, but I don't think that that's included.
Yeah, I don't think it should be.
But I'll write it down and clarify with him, make sure that we're on the same page.
Yeah, because I know there's some building code items in New York State that they measure basements as the first story in some places, in some triggers.
I mean, we'll just double check. I know Mike did read it over and he was okay with most of the language as far as the enforceability and use. So I'm sure if it needs a minor correction. Right, Kelly? We got the whiteout these days.
Well, you guys already talked about my comment 3B then, so it sounds
We stole your thunder.
you guys will, clarify that and make a decision. But then back to my comment 3A, so the intention is then for, new, really for all, but really, you're going to require for the new or modified buildings. So I think, for like number 3, it could say any new building greater than 3 stories, and then any new multifamily dwelling for 4. And then maybe there's like a number 7 that indicates, any proposed modifications or, requirements for changes that need to go before the building inspector for building permit would be required to have a Knox box or something like that. So that would be my suggestion, if you agree.
Yeah, Kelly, just one question, Kelly. Would that trigger a major change to the local law that we're required to sit on the trustee's desk for another week, or?
No, so once I get this, I'll make these revisions and I'll provide it back to them in a red line version of the local law. They don't have to adopt that one, but it would be on their desks timely.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to see.
And the public hearing is still open, so the public would have a chance to weigh in on that as well.
Thank you.
Okay, my comment number 4 just kind of brings the law for full circle, I think. You know, in the section A, it talks about at an approved location, and we're recommending just to add the language by a representative of the Woodbury Fire Department. That's discussed later on in section I. So if you agree, that could be done. And again, I think that just, you know, provides some clarity in that original section A. For my comment number 5, so I kind of looked at this thinking that the approved locks were for sort of a barrier that would prevent the fire department from accessing the Knox box. So like if they had to enter, you know, a gated property and then the Knox box was located within that gate, then that lock had to be an approved lock for the gate. Does that make sense? So,
So
go ahead, Chris.
What Knoxbox does is they also have padlocks that are keyed the same way. So if there's a gate on the other side of where the Knoxbox is located, that gate or that lock would have to be keyed with the Knoxbox key to allow the fire department access through that lock. Does that
Okay. Yeah, no, it does. And I was kind of considering, so like at what point, you know, does the lock need to be approved? Is it prior to accessing the locks or the Knox box, or, you know, essentially afterwards, the keys would be within the Knox box, correct? For any locks, you know.
Right. So any locks after the Knox box don't have to be approved. So any locks to get to the Knox box need to be approved. Anything after that is whatever the building wants to use.
Okay, so we're on the same page. So I think what I did was I suggested some language be added to that. An improved lock shall be installed on gates or similar barriers that would prevent immediate access to the Knox box. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that makes sense and is a good clarification.
Okay. Number 6, elevator keys. That was just a simple, you know, update to the reference to the building code consistent with the rest of the chapter. 7. This was one, I noted that the law requires yearly inspections by the building department, but we considered, or we recommended you consider either a referral to section 154.7 of the code that allows the fire marshal to conduct periodic inspections at any reasonable time. And I just kind of took those, you know, out of that particular section because that's what I think essentially it's intended to convey. Or you could consider with the building department, you know, how they might want to track their annual inspections and just to maintain compliance with that requirement.
I think the whole idea was behind that is that we want to make sure at least once a year, all of these boxes are getting checked so that the keys that contain it are still valid. So I think that's what they were trying to kind of get at there. So yeah, I said, I don't know, could it be at minimum once a year or more frequently as deemed necessary by would that make more sense?
Yeah, I think that's one way to approach it. I think understanding sort of your intent, you know, also clarifies my question. You know, one of the things I was just kind of indicating is if the building department is going to be required to do those yearly inspections, they should have some sort of mechanism for tracking it, you know, where they're located and how often they're doing it so that they, you know, could comply with the law. That's all.
Well, is that a building inspector's job or is that a fire marshal's job to inspect something like that?
Well, the fire marshal is the building inspector in.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Yeah, but the way the law is written, it requires the building department to do those yearly inspections.
So I think we can clarify where we say building department and put in the same consistency as your recommendation number 1. But I think my only thing is that, as Chris was saying, if we say periodic inspections at any reasonable time, it doesn't require the mandatory yearly inspection.
Right.
So I think the one clarification is what the board was trying to get to, but the other one leaves it a little too open-ended without the mandatory.
Understood.
Yeah, with compliance issues, if it's not documented, it didn't happen.
Pretty much.
And I understanding that, you know, it has to be the right keys or else it doesn't function. So it makes total sense to me.
Yeah, it's worthless if they change the locks of the building and they don't change the lock.
Right.
They spent all this money and they still got to call a locksmith at 3 o'clock on New Year's Eve to come fix the front door. Which, believe it or not, this actually helps the businesses in the communities because you can be a gentleman and let yourself in and let yourself out and not do a bunch of damage. Everybody, anybody else on the board, questions, comments, concerns, or changes they see?
Is there a, I see the list of keys, right? Primary keys, fire alarm panel, full station electrical panels, like elevator, fire service. Is there one for sprinkler rooms?
I don't think we specified sprinkler rooms. We can add it.
Yeah, because that's something else that might need access.
One would think they would include that, but if you don't put it in there, right, they won't do it.
And something else on, we have some projects that we did in Connecticut where they actually color code the keys so that it's easier. I mean, obviously you're writing it down, labeling it, but in the moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Color.
Yeah,
They say in their code exactly.
that's actually a very good idea.
I can tell you from personal experience in a smoke-filled hallway, it doesn't make a difference if it's color coded, it's braille, it's got a
Glow in
neon,
the dark.
got a neon sign flashing on it. You're sitting there going like this, go, God damn it, why are there 30 keys on this ring?
In a moment like that, Chris, are you really waiting for the key to work or are you just going in?
Professional, it's smoke, it's not fire. There's a complete difference. There's a full difference there. It's not hot. That's the only thing with the color coding is that there's that I found, and then like the paint and stuff tends to either chip off or flake off, or what happens if you're colorblind? Everything looks gray.
Okay, so is that a yes or a no on the color coding?
Maybe.
Well, the
Right.
board, for the report back to the Board of Trustees.
I'm not saying it's not a bad idea. I just know in practicality, I don't think it will work out.
If in practicality it doesn't work, and I can see why it wouldn't work in practicality, I don't think it's necessary.
I mean, it could also be something that's left to the building department. If it makes sense for the fire marshal to have them color coded, you could leave it to them and their discretion.
I think we have something there about the requirements for marking them, right? So isn't that kind of open-ended? That the building department could have them marked however they wanted?
Yeah, I'm just looking. Yes, in subsection K, it says that each building key within the Knox box shall be clearly labeled as to its use by engraving or affixing a durable plastic or metal tag. Handwritten isn't acceptable. So the metal tag or the durable plastic may have to be
Color-coded.
green. Yeah, color coded. So it does sort of leave that open-ended to them.
Good thought, though. That was any other feedback from the board to send over to the other board?
One last thing was, do you think anyone's going to be confused by the line, any new commercial tenant fit out? As in the sense that if I have an existing commercial space and I have a tenant fit out, they may say, oh, it doesn't require a Knox box because it's not a new commercial building. It's existing.
So I think we talked about adding another bullet to this indicating sort of all existing, buildings above requiring modifications or repairs or building permit would then be subject to this Knox box requirement. I don't know if that helps and sort of clarifies that.
Yeah, I think it does, as long as it covers commercial and not just the size or stories of the building.
Yeah, I think if they've got it rented to one person and then they have to rent it to another, but there's no changes, it probably wouldn't come back. But if they needed any kind of building permit, then it would be the modification.
Got it.
And we were talking before about whether or not the basement is considered a story, but the language here is greater than 3 stories. So that would mean either 4-story on top of a basement or 2 stories on top of a basement. It's got to be greater than 3. So if they count the basement as 1, then you're allowed 3 on top of that. Or it kicks in when there's 3 on top of that.
And that was, I think I was trying to catch the hotels and stuff.
2 mezzanines apply.
Oh. Do we want to say any? 10, 20, 30.
Does our code have say mezzanines have to be whatever, 30 3% of the floor area in order to be counted as a mezzanine?
No, I don't think we take into account for any sort of low rise or mid rise.
Yeah, I don't think we do. We also don't define story, cellar, or basement. So it would be done by building height, and we would
Got
then
it.
look to the building inspector for his interpretation of that.
We change it to 30 feet then, so it's just below the 35-foot threshold, 30 feet from ground, any building above 30 feet above ground level.
It's up to you guys.
Hey, what do
What
you
you
think?
want to recommend?
What do you think about that, Mike?
But yeah, it seems like story isn't really well defined, so.
Are you trying to
the
catch
law on
3
something that's
stories?
not defined doesn't work.
Yeah,
Are
well,
you-
you're trying to catch 3 stories, yeah.
I mean, I could do a building in 30 feet.
Oh, come on.
86, 86, 86.
Building 29.9 feet above average.
Oh, yeah.
Let's just stick with how
Oh,
about
we could do, and put a mezzanine on it.
What if I just put
With the
in
basement.
your comments that a story is not defined in the code, so that should be clarified, and then I can talk with Mike and the Board of Trustees as to what they're intending to catch there.
Okay,
That sounds good.
sounds like a plan.
Okay.
Anything else for anybody? Come on, 2 minutes to 10. We can almost finish before 10. Anything else?
Rangers
Motion
are
to
up 4-2.
authorize. Sorry, what was that?
The Rangers are up 4-2.
Oh,
A motion to authorize council and the village engineer to send, oh, actually, it's you, right, Natalie, Kelly, that sends the comments over? Yeah,
It's me.
so motion,
comments consistent with tonight's discussion.
yeah, what she said.
I second.
Okay, second by Michael. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
1 minute to 10. Anybody want to stay? No?
I move that we close the meeting.
Oh, a motion to move to close the meeting. I'll second it.
There you go.
All right, everybody have, all in favor?
Have a good night, guys.
Good night.
Have a good
Aye.
night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.